I'm really impressed by your, I suppose, psychological maturity that you process things and really reflect on things.
Yes.
That's something that, I mean, as a young professional that
Yes.
I'm trying to foster.
Yes.
So how did you get to this point? Did someone tell you about this and how to approach it, or is it your own rationale? Or I suppose you said you were reading a lot and consuming a lot. So, how did you get to this stage?
Yeah, I think there's so much that you can do around like self-awareness. It's funny because I've started doing the Waking Up course by Sam Harris. This guy is like full neuroscientist, and he's done a purist, like this is what we know about the brain, and like here's how to, and in his course, it's very, very good that he has an app for it. He talks about, when we go to school, like we know how to learn arithmetic, or we know how to learn sports. Actually, we even know, if I want to make my muscle bigger, I know what to do and I know what to eat, and we know how to make an elite athlete good at whatever it is. Like, we know this, right, in science, but we also know this for the mind. Like, we know what it takes to manage worries, to manage procrastination, to manage motivation, we know it. Like, we know it in science, we know it in modern psychology, but people haven't been taught the basics. So it's kind of crazy. Like, you go out of school and university, and it's like you haven't even been taught what is a good, healthy diet and what good exercise is for the brain. Like, it is completely insane. And so I think for me, that is 90%. And I'm very fortunate where I don't have mental health challenges, and I know founders that have struggle with anxiety and depression and stuff. That's an additional mountain to climb over. So I'm very fortunate that my default position is like hyper optimist, and so I don't have additional things to deal with. But what got me there is it's very clear that all these challenges that you're having, it's your interpretation of what's reality, and it's the decisions that you make, and it's the attitude that you take throughout that. And so for me, like, it's consuming a lot of really, really, really good content. Some things that really stand out for me, like recently in the last few years, probably Principles by Ray Diallo. And there's a core part in that book. It's probably the best business book written of all time, I think. It's like drinking pure cordial. You can probably only do a couple of pages at a time.
It's pretty bland, but it's super. Some of the principles are remarkable.
And he's got this thing in there, which is really around growth mindset, which is pain plus reflection equals growth. So where there's challenges and where there's problems, normally we want to assert blame. Normally we want to find a reason why. Normally we don't want to think about it. And that's natural. That's, the human brain's natural thing is not to embrace pain. But what you have to do is, like, this is a challenging situation. Like, I'm going to deeply lean into this pain, and I'm going to fully embrace it and have full reflection. Full stock take of what exactly is going on. I'm going to see reality for what it is, which is most people's problem, actually, because you tell yourself stories that aren't actually reality. And having surrounded by people who tell you reality is incredibly important as a founder. Like, I had a couple of people that we hired early on that were and I forced people to tell me as it is. Like, I forced people to tell me my blind spots. I forced people to call me out on shit. So creating an environment and a culture where you can't even allow for your own brain to trick you around what reality is. So stare at reality in the true face. And those realities hurt. So the pain is something that you don't know, we want to lean away from, right? Which is half our users, this is an example, this didn't happen to us, but there were versions like this, half our users are not logging in and using our product every day, and that's getting worse. Let's just say that was the thing. Oh, well, they don't quite get it yet. Oh, it's because we've got to build that next feature. And this is often how people handle those situations, as opposed to, no, this is actual reality. Let's stare at reality. It hurts. Fully embrace reality, and then deeply reflect on that pain. And then out of that process comes growth. And so, if you sort of say, how do you get started on all this stuff? I would say all the literature around growth mindset, also buzzword, but if you deeply understand growth mindset, stuff from Carol Dweck, and you just put it into YouTube and search growth mindset. The stuff around that is really around this principle of embracing the challenge of the pain, seeing reality for what it is, running a self-reflection loop over that, and then the growth moments will happen. It's very easy to give advice to yourself, actually, because it's something that, like if I was like, okay, this is happening and this is happening, I sometimes imagine like if a mate was saying what it is that I'm going through. So it's like, okay, this is happening and then this is happening, and like I'm really worried about this, and I'm like, and you actually look back at it, it's actually very easy to give advice on yourself, but you don't run that hardcore reality reflection test. So it's just building that muscle and just getting good at it, and having people around you to help you foster that thinking.
Actually, you saying that, kind of silly as it is, but it calls back to an episode of Scrubs, where JD and Turk are the main surgeons and the main MDs, and Turk has diabetes symptoms, but he won't accept it. And JD goes to him and says, look, I've got this patient presenting these symptoms.
Right.
What's your diagnosis? And he says, oh, it's diabetes, clearly.
Yeah.
He's like, and then he says, that's you, the patient is you.
Oh, right.
He says, oh, really? Okay. Then he had to accept that, okay, I can't eat Snickers bars anymore.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. But he wasn't thinking clearly or seeing it clearly, like clarity.
That's or just seeing reality for what it is, and we don't want to. Like the brain has purposely, built ways of, deluding yourself, and, the cognitive dissonance is very real, and it's very real around often probably the most important pains. And so like embracing that and just knowing that you have that cognitive dissonance, right? And knowing that you have these, conformational biases, and like just understanding, your own mind and just being aware of it, and not even trying to change it, but just going, oh, I could be like falling for just looking for all the good things right now. Like what actually, like I'm going to go seek out the things that are really, really shit. I'm going to seek out the things that, aren't very good right now, and like stare that reality in the face. Like that's the only way that you get the growth. Yeah.
That's really, really valuable. Appreciate that. Now we're getting close to the end.
Sure.
So I do want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your customer experience podcast that you do.
Yeah, sure.
And also how can our listeners find you, and what can they look forward to in terms of your customer experience podcast?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we started. It's called Customer Experience Leaders. So Adam and myself, my co-host. We have a very simple perspective, which is let's go talk to the best people in the world that are executing customer experience. So let's go talk to the Disneys, let's go talk to the Southwest Airlines, let's go talk to the the local country roads and the Officeworks, and the guys that seem to be doing some good stuff in various elements of customer experience. And let's figure out how the hell they do it. And let's just have a very candid conversation about that. And let's take the jargon out, let's take the agency talk away, and let's just boil it down to some simple practical takeaways. So that's sort of the promise of every episode. Other times, so one is like we talk to great brains around that. The other thing that we do also is talk to various industry leaders. So everyone's talking about design thinking, like everyone's talking about journey maps or service design blueprints. Like honestly, what the fuck are these things? And like when would you use what tool, and what's the difference between human-centered design and design thinking, like, and how would you actually practically use this? And I'm a marketing manager, is there anything that I can do with this, or is this just a bunch of fluffy stuff? And so we break down those various topics as well and speak to leaders in those fields. So that's effectively what the podcast is. And yeah, we've had a great run. Actually, we had an episode recently, I think, was it episode 40? I think it is, and we did one of the best of type shows, and usually podcast best of, so just an edit fest. But what we did was we looked back at our 40 customer experience global leaders, and we distilled everything that we learnt, and we poured through the transcript, and we spent hours like analyzing it. And we had the guy who heads up Bain & Co. For the customer experience value map, some real heavy hitters that input into this. And we looked at it and we went, okay, well, if someone asks us, it was born out of I started getting shit scared of what if someone asks me, hey, Mike, you've done this podcast now for 2 years. How would you summarize getting started, to deliver good customer experience? And I'm like, we should know that. I run a company that helps organizations understand their customers better, and we're certainly no customer experience consulting company, but we should know that. And so we summarized the last 40 episodes, and what we quickly realized was that we we're pulling together a framework. We called it a Flywheel, and we put together a very simple customer experience flywheel, which has sort of the customer at the heart, talks about like leadership, how you structure your people and your processes to like constantly go around this flywheel and make the customer experience better. So if you like, I can spend a moment on that. Otherwise, you're welcome to check out the episode.
Please, let's hear it. Yeah. Let's hear about this flywheel.
So if you Google search customer experience flywheel, it'll take you straight to the episode, or it'll come up to the blog post where we summarize this, and there's a PDF that you can get. But essentially at the heart of the flywheel, in the center of the flywheel, is your customer. And it's knowing that the experience that the customer has is emotional. Like at the heart of the customer experience is emotional. And the customer just wants a handful of things, which is pretty straightforward. First one is know me, then care for me, deliver me value, make it easy for me, put me in control, like don't put me through your shitty processes, and like I want to be in control of it, and then ideally impress me. So sort of know me, care for me, deliver me value, make it easy, put me in control, and impress me. And that's sort of what the customer wants. And so then you go, okay, well if the customer's at the heart of it, like, and that's what they want, like how the hell do we do that? Like, yes, know me, care for me, deliver me value, make it easy for me. They all, are great sounding things, and we can probably relate to that as both a consumer and a consumer of B2B services. Like how the fuck do you do that as an organization? So for us, the first thing, what we realized, in the analysis was it starts with leadership, and it really starts from the leaders of the organization or the team. You may be in a team and you want to implement this. And then as the team leader, it really starts with sharing your purpose and sharing your why. Like, why the hell are we even here? Why is it we even wanting to do this? And the second thing is a commitment to continuous improvement and a culture around continuous improvement. There's got to be a commitment to invest in long-term outcomes, because customer delivered outcomes are rarely short-term wins. You can't just, let's throw $5,000 at a Facebook ad campaign, spike our numbers tomorrow. Like, that's not really going to help know me, care for me, deliver me value, make it easy, etc. That's spiking a short-term thing. So you have to take a mindset of, okay, we're here for the long term to build, value for the customer. I think uniting teams around customer experience and bringing more of the language of the customer and the customer experience, into the conversations. Amazon are quite famous for having the spare chair in the meeting rooms, and that spare chair represents the customer. And so when they're having that conversation, they're like, well, what will the customer be saying about this? Because you can kind of be caught up in all your own shit internally, but like, how would the customer view this if they were sitting here in this meeting, right now? I think, so bringing that culture and uniting teams around customer experience. As a leader, you have to model customer first behavior. There's no point in saying, hey, customer's so important and customer experience is important and like blah, blah, blah. And then you're hammering like the quarterly number, and that's the only bit in your language. So you sort of have to model it yourself. And then the last thing is celebrating the wins. No matter how small the wins are, there's something that comes through, or someone delivers something in the team or the organization that's, delivering these things to great customer experience, celebrating that as opposed to just celebrating a financial win or a cost saving or like the things that we typically celebrate. Like, we should be celebrating customer outcomes. So that's sort of the leadership side. On the people side, it's really around getting the right people on the team. Having a team first culture, then customer second, so investing in employee experience, because if your employees don't love coming to work, they're sure as hell not going to give great customer service and experience. Having a culture of always improving, investing in training, empowering teams, and really celebrating team members, especially customer facing teams, to deliver wow experiences. And then finally, you sort of need to build the processes around this stuff. So we sort of call it leave nothing to chance. And really the goal should be like, the processes should just be seamless for a customer. Like, don't make me think, like I shouldn't have to figure out where I am in this process or what's happening next. It should just be really, really clear and seamless for the customer. There's a bunch of frameworks that you can use, like lean UX, design thinking, like these types of frameworks, service blueprints, they're all really good tools to help you improve processes. So you sort of don't have to reinvent the wheel, sort of leverage these frameworks. Be really, really clear in your communication, have documented process, document how customers feel throughout that journey. So as they're going on the journey, you really want to have a clear understanding and measurement of how customers feel as you're making these changes, and then really using this data around the customer experience to improve. So there's no point in sort of huddling around just financial metrics every day. You should be huddling around customer metrics every day. And so clearly insert, RateIt, my day job now. But, like it's the classic, what you measure is what you get better at, and, what you measure is what matters to the organization. And so making sure you've got good measurements of, how customers feel throughout their journey with you, and that you're constantly, improving leadership and people and processes around that. So that's the short and long summary of the customer experience flywheel.
There's so much stuff there that when you say it like that, it appears obvious.
Yes,
but
very obvious.
Organisations, I don't think, are turning their minds to a disciplined way. So
yes.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yes, yeah. And that's one of the key challenges that we unpack a lot. There's a whole new world called customer experience management professionals, or CX pros. It's very, very new. I mean, you couldn't have gone to uni and done a customer experience, degree. And these CX pros are trying. They believe in this stuff. They know some of this stuff. They're trying to figure it all out. But sort of getting organisations, united around that, and then the thinking and the delivery of it. That's that's the hard thing. And so that's one of the things that we explore, in the podcast as well. Is like, well, when organisations have got some of these inklings firing, well, like how is it that they got there? What is it that they did to get there? And how do they manage things like, oh, well, that may deliver a better customer outcome, but like, what's the ROI on this? Or, how's that going to help us hit this like metric? Sure, we're throwing customers through a confusing process, but, we'll get to that later. We won't fix that. Like, how do you elevate this stuff, and how do you start bringing a true culture of like customer-centric, because it's easy to say those words, but actually a customer-centric organization is the one that is thinking and executing in a way like this flywheel that I described.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that even in our day-to-day business, we all have customers, whether they be internal customers, external customers. So, and I know a lot of our listeners are sitting in a corporate environment. They have bosses, they have stakeholders, and all that sort of stuff. So, how do we adapt some of these customer experience concepts to that business world where we've got internal customers?
Yeah.
Knowing that, or how your boss feels, or how your internal customers feel, is very important.
Yes.
Sometimes, irrationally more important than anything else.
Yes.
Can you touch on that, and how might our listeners use this in their day-to-day?
So I think the sort of customer experience framework, you can, I think any young professional starting in their corporate career is in a perfect position to champion the customer, actually, because you get to play hey, I'm a bit dumb here, but like, why is it that we're putting customers through this process? Or, hey, like, I noticed this, in our quarterly update, like our MD said that this and this was important about the customer, but I'm noticing we're doing this. Like, maybe we could do this to improve, as an example. So I think there's lots of opportunities where you can basically be the voice of the customer. Actually, you should be niggling and annoying as much as possible, and be the champion of the customer, and put on a customer hat and go, hey, if I was a customer right now, like, we're doing this initiative, this is something that I would think. And actually just being a voice of the customer is actually something that a lot of people don't do internally. So that's a great place to start. And it doesn't take much to channel. Like, you just have to sort of put on this empathy hat of, okay, well, like, how would my customers go through this new initiative that we're doing? Or how would my customers, or our customers respond to this? And I think just championing that voice, is a wonderful place to start. And honestly, it's a perfect thing for an annoying millennial to, be saying to the old people in the organization, hey, like, if I was a customer, this is what I would think. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is a little bit more nuanced, and it's sort of beyond customer experience, and it's sort of the only advice that I would give, to someone starting their, especially corporate career, just any work career, is really deeply. It's something that I did when I first got my job at Blackberry, and my first thing I did when I started at Microsoft was I spent time deeply thinking about, well, what is it that the organization is trying to do right now? And I would read all the leadership memos, and I would attend all hands, and not like tune out, and like intently, and I'd be like, okay, I get it. I get what we're trying to do, this quarter, and I get what's important to the organization right now, like this year, like these things are important. And then I would think about, in my day job and things that I'm exposed to, what is it that I'm aware of, or ideas that I have, or things that I see that are blocking the organization achieving the objectives and trying to get the objectives that they want. And it's very, very simple, actually. Not a lot of people think like that when you're junior, actually. Like, you're just sort of thinking of impressing that next line manager or doing that task really well. But actually what's impressive and what's really helpful is more people thinking about what the company's goals are or the objectives are. And then you can be super junior. In my experience, doesn't matter how junior you are, and senior people are very, very open to receiving an email that is thoughtful about, I noticed this and this happens in this area, you may not be aware of it. Like, I sent Steve Barmer 3 emails when this was pre-Nadal, in my first 6 months, right? Because I was like, hey, I noticed this and this is happening, at this, and we say this really matters. I get that it's way down in the weeds, and something over here, but I think this is something that's really important to get us an outcome that could help us get that goal. And every single time, it's you need to talk to so-and-so and so-and-so. And then all of a sudden I'd be having a 30-minute chat with some VP. And I'm not trying to do it to look like a hero. I actually just deeply care about, I'm trying to take on this mission that we're trying to do here. And I'm trying to, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, and I want us to help. These are things that I've noticed and things that I've noticed getting in the way. And so I think you're in a wonderful position when you're, junior and you're starting out, because you can use that voice very powerfully to actually just go, hey, I really care about this goal that we're trying to achieve, and this is something that I've noticed, something that may not be aware of, and hey, can I help? I'm happy to take on this extra thing that helps us, achieve this outcome. Not many people go to that as their go-to mode, but that becomes, you get exposed to all sorts of good stuff, and you go through your own rapid learning journey by taking that sort of way of thinking.
I think that's a perfect place to end it there. That was incredibly insightful, and I think a lot of our listeners will take a lot of value from that. So that's been amazing. So I really appreciate your time, Michael.
Yeah, no problems. Yeah, if anyone wants to connect with me, always interested in connecting with young, smart people. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I accept almost everyone that makes the request, and more than happy to help out where I can.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to the PerthYP Podcast. You can find more episodes on our YouTube and LinkedIn pages at PerthYP. Until next time, keep listening, keep growing, and keep connecting.